Hello, my name is Jesus Cristian Trejo, and my presentation is about restorative practices. I am a fifth grade teacher in Stagecoach Elementary. The outline. Today we will talk about what restorative practices, why it is important to implement restorative practices in schools, and how to implement restorative practices in classroom/school and learn about the tier list of restorative practices. What is restorative practice? Restorative practices relationships between people and communities. The purpose is to build healthy communities, increase social capital, decrease crime and antisocial behavior, repair harm, and restore relationships. In a shorter sentence, restorative practice is to build and maintain relationships between staff, parents, and students. Why use restorative practices, you may ask, right? So it's to reduce suspensions, to improve school climate, strengthen relationships, and to improve equity and inclusion. So with restorative practices, we try to reduce suspension with it, right? We want to learn why the student is having issues, the issues that they're having, and are we able to come into an agreement to help the student stop the behavior, the unacceptable behavior, right? Improved school climate is basically no bullying, um, no bullying or anything of that kind where they're, you know, calling students names, any of that, right? And if they do, we try to help the students come into an agreement and help them not do it again, right? And strengthen relationships too. We want to help the students and staff and parents come together as a community and so we can build relationships so we won't be how would you say so we won't be random people. We want to feel that everybody is welcomed in the school and feel welcomed as a community. And restorative practices offer schools an alternative to traditional disciplinary actions that center on punishment for misbehavior and breaking rules. So basically, we want to move away from traditional disciplinary and do restorative practices, right? Because some of us, well, yeah, I would say some of us, right? Traditional disciplinary. When we hear that right off on the top of our heads, when we were younger, we can get flashbacks, right? Of our teachers telling us, stop doing that. You don't do it. Instead of trying to figure out, why do you think I'm doing it? Maybe I'm having issues at home. But instead of trying to figure me out, you're trying to scream at me to stop doing things. That's not going to help me out. That's not going to help me or help you out. And I wish some of the stuff some of my teachers back in the day would use it on me. But now I'm able to use it at the children that I'm teaching now, right? Restorative practices. This photo illustrates of what's going on, right? So first we have address and discuss the needs of the school community, build healthy relationships between educators and students, reduce, prevent, and improve harmful behavior, repair harm and restore positive relationships, and then restore conflict, hold individuals and groups accountable. So all this comes together in a circle, right? We address and discuss the needs of the school and community. So not just the students, but parents and staff alike, right? What's going on? Can we help each other out? Not can we help each other out? Not be negative, but come out as a positive, right? Positive reinforcements, right? Build healthy relationships, right, between educators and students. We don't want students to hate on the staff or teachers. We want the students to love the teachers, to come to them when there's any problems that arise, right? Against the staff and students or students. We also like to reduce and prevent and improve harmful behavior. We don't want any harmful behavior. We want to reduce or prevent it. We don't want it to arise, right? And with restorative practices, we're able to reduce it. Also repair harm and restore positive relationships. So if the student has a problem with the staff, we're able to repair that harm. We're able to help them start all over again, right? Instead of traditional sense where it's like, no, I don't like you, therefore do not come into my class. We want students to come back and not miss any school days, right? and then resolve conflict, hold individuals and groups accountable. So at the end, when we help out the students, we want them to also see that, you know, um, the issues that have arisen due to their behavior, they're accountable for them. We want to make sure that students and staff know that accountability, is what's going to matter the most, right? Accountability, when students or staff feel accountable about something, that's when we'll be able to resolve issues using restorative practices. So what we're looking at right now is a tier list of restorative practices, right? Starting from tier 1 on the bottom, then 2 and 3. Of course, this is color coded, and so we know that green is good, because go, yellows, be cautious, let's be cautious a little bit. Then of course, red is boom. This is where we're having most issues, right? So in the tier list, we're going down all the way up. Now our first tier, which is tier 1, this is where usually 80-90% of the time where we land, right? In this tier, we have classroom circles, effective statements, and questions. Classroom managed, less intensive, less structure, less planning, but we do it more frequently. When we do classroom circles, this is the time where we help students kind of get together and figure out what the issues are, if they have any issues, or they just want to talk about something, right? Just basic things, right? But this is where we do it every day, every morning to kind of build that foundation of a community, right? This is where we're having the less issues, but students are still being brought into the community. Examples of classroom circles, examples of tier 1 is classroom circles and community circles. So we're strengthening relationships in classrooms with classroom circles and community circles. We're strengthening relationships, addressing problems in the classrooms, and also taking turns talking about in the circle to feel students welcomed and heard. So in these kinds of situations, we're getting students to talk. It may not be anything bad, but we're getting students to talk and feel like they're welcomed. This also portrays to the students that are always in the back. And those. We have a couple of those. Everyone does, right? They don't want to talk. They don't want to do anything. At least with this, any question that arises, like, what's your favorite pizza? Everybody would answer, right? This is basically tier 1. This is where we know we have a kind of little bit of issue, but we're able to handle it due to classroom circles. And once they get used to it, they know that they can't get away with it, right? But we also have effective language, right? So this is the questions that we ask with effective language. What happened? What were you thinking at this time? What have you thought about since? Who has been affected by what you did? In what way? And what do you think you need to do to make things right? So already in tier 1, we're already having kids accountable for their actions. But it's not like, oh, you're not doing this right. I know what you're doing. It's basically asking them, why are you doing it? Is there some way I can help you? Oh, what's going on? You just want to know information with no judgment or no scolding, right? Classroom circle videos examples. I have 2 examples here, 2 video examples of what's going on, right? Of 2 examples of classroom circles that you can do in your classroom. Let me see if they pop up. One of them is the 60-second strategy community circles, which helps out a lot, right? It's the same thing I said. You can put them all in a circle and ask them questions. What's your favorite food? Who do you like the most? Or what's your favorite anime? Basic questions, right? Or do you have any concerns for the class? Is there a way you can help me out in knowing what to put in the walls? Stuff like that, right? Where they feel like they are welcome in the classroom. Another one would be second strategies of doing snowball toss. This is a second example. Great example. You have students write things about, such as, well, what makes you feel sad today? And once they put it in there, you ask them, what do we do with concerns like this? and mostly all of them would say, throw it in the trash, right? So they bottle it, or not bottle up, but they put it in, they make it into a shape of a snowball, and start throwing it around the classroom, just kind of get them started, right? Get them excited, ready to go. And then once the 60 seconds stop, we gather one snowball each, and we read what's inside, right? So we can at least know that it's not just one kid having an issue, it's everyone else, because we're all a community, right? And this point, we can help each other out, students and staff. We can say, oh, it's all right. We all have that issue. So this is barely the beginning, right? Tier 1. This is where we start. So good job. After watching the video, what did you gather from the video? And do you think you will implement these examples in your classroom? Think about that, 30 seconds to a minute. Think about it. You think you can implement these examples? I know I can, because I've already done it, right? And works wonders. Now, tier 2. Tier 2 is, be cautious, right? Like when we're driving, it tells us to be cautious, careful, careful how you drive. You might get red, but we're kind of there, right? So this is about 10, 15% of the time. This is where we do restorative chat and restorative mediation. We're getting to the point where it's not just the whole classroom now. It's a staff plus students, where it's like 1-on-1 or 1-on-3 or 1-on-2, but it's something to where the teachers can help the students out individually, not all together in a classroom. Tier 2 examples, right? Take place with a staff member, either with us or with the principal or vice principal, whoever it is, but it takes place with a staff. Staff supports the student to take responsibility and be accountable for their actions, right? So whatever they've done, we hold them accountable and say, you did, this is what happened. You need to take responsibility, but we have to make sure that we understand why the behavior occurs without any judgment. We cannot have any judgment whatsoever. We might think like, oh, this student is the worst. Can't do that. We have to hold our judgment. We have to go in there with an open mind and say, you know what? I want to help you. What can we do to help you be a better person, right? And we also have to remember no scolding, right? We can't scold a child. We can't say, if they tell us the truth, we can't say, I knew it all along. You're not going to do this again. We can't do that, right? So no scolding, and we can't hold any judgment. We're there to support the student, not support our selfish needs of being right. One of the examples is restorative chats, right? So staff members use restorative questions to have the student reflect on their behavior and have them go back to the class and mend relationships with the teacher. So this is to mend. So this is, we have restorative questions, right? We ask them, what's going on? How are you doing, right? Once we get those questions going, we hold the student accountable and say, do you know why you're being held accountable? Do you know why you're here talking to me? Do you know why this is going on? And most of the time they'll answer yes. They'll feel bad about it, but we also want them to go back into class and mend the relationship with the teacher, because we don't want the teacher and students to hate each other, right? We want them to be good to each other, because at the end, we want our students to learn. We don't want them to fall behind because the student doesn't like a teacher, right? So we always want to mend the relationships, not destroy them. And these are the questions. These questions look familiar. We've had those questions in the past, right? What happened? What were you thinking at the time? What have you thought about since? Who has been affected by what you did? In what way? What do you think you need to make things right? So all these questions are having the student feel accountable, right? That it's not just the teacher's fault. It's it's maybe your fault, but you have to accept the consequences. Restorative mediation, right? Resolve the conflicts between two students. Students have the option to express themselves on how they feel, think of a plan to help them move forward with any issues. So this is, for example, two of my students were having issues with each other. They could not stand being next to each other. So what I did was talk to each student individually, figure out what was going on, and then ask them, hey, we need to have a serious conversation. All three of us have to be in a room and we need to talk it out. Do you think you can handle that? They would say yes. So we took one day out to kind of talk for about 30 minutes about what was going on through their lives, right? What was going on that they hated each other? Are they able to handle each other in the future? You know, these questions that I had for them. So it took us about 30 minutes to figure out that they just didn't like each other because of their clothes, which is totally random, right? But we figured out the issue, right? I told the students to express themselves how they felt, and they felt so safe to finally get convinced that you know they just didn't like each other because of their clothes. But I came up with a plan with them and told them, let's think of a plan. Let's see if, let's do this. Kind of give each other props every day and see if we can move forward without any issues. You think that's okay? And they said yes. So from then on to today, they're doing really well. They are like best friends now. So it's just a matter of talking to them and feeling where they're coming from, right? It may be the argument may be not there, but to them it's the biggest thing in the world. You know, we just have to listen to our students. Next, this would be an example of a video, which I will go on later, of what's going on here. Basically, mediated approach. The staff with the two students. Restorative circles. This is for serious incidents. So meeting with everyone involved in the situation at school. So students, staff, teachers, and janitors. Janitors can be involved too, right? Requires pre-meetings to everyone involved so they can know what questions will be asked, what to expect of the meeting, and to know the guidelines that need to be followed during the meeting. So this is where everybody gets pre-planned and they know what questions are going to be asked. So no one's being hit from a different direction. It's like, oh, you didn't tell me this was going to happen, or wait, you didn't tell me this was going to happen. So everybody gets pre-planned meeting and says, and what's going on is, I'm telling you what's going to be asked or what I'm going to ask. Be prepared, But in the meantime, we know that we have guidelines that you need to follow. Please follow them accordingly, right? And these are for the serious incidents. So let's say, for example, a student is just bullying everybody in the world, right? Or not in the world, but in the whole school. This is where one of the restorative circles comes into play. We just need to, this is for us to know, why are you doing it to just so many people? Why not? Like, what's going on? We need to know, instead of kicking that kid out, we need to figure out step by step of what's going on by bringing students or by bringing the student, staff, teachers, and anyone that was involved. We bring them into here. So knowing from tier 1 to tier 2, we are coming to tier 3. This is where 3 to 5% get to. Very small, but it happens, right? This is the red part. This is where we do not want to be, but it happens, right? And in this part, this is the restorative, and the restorative play comes into play, right? But this is where it's office managed. This is where it's more intense, more structure, more planning, but it happens less frequently, right? So this is where restorative conferences, this is for situations that are disruptive and harmful. So for example, let's say a student keeps bringing, let's make it really extreme, right? The student keeps beating up different students. And Finally, all the students have had enough and they told on him, right? This is for situations that this individual does not stop at all. They keep doing it over and over and over. And it's going to get to it gets to the point where we're really close of just, I would say, held the student accountable to, or it's getting to the point where we're just going to kick them out of school, right? Now, we know that we're doing, with this restorative conferences, we know that, this is our last straw. This is the last part, right? Where we as individuals can more than likely help them out, right? So when we do these kind of restorative conferences, we need seating arrangements, right? We need seating arrangements because whoever the people were involved, we need to have them, in different situations. We can't have them close because then that starts the fighting again. So we have to keep them separated, right? But we also have seating arrangements. We have script for the facilitator. So a script for them so they can know what they're going to talk about next. And also the other people, facilitators or teachers that are there, they'll have a script just in case anything happens, right? We also need guidelines. For this, we know for a fact we need guidelines. Guidelines will help us in a way where the student, if one of the students that were harmed or the harmer or feel attacked, we know for a fact that we tell them, hey, you got to remember the guidelines. Tone of voice down. You can't be aggressive. Remember the guidelines. This guidelines is for everyone to follow so everyone can feel safe. Meeting with the harmer and harmed, right? This is the part where we have both individuals in the same space that this thing keeps going on, the situation that's very harmful, that they'll both look at each other and they'll talk to each other, but in a way that's peaceful because of the guidelines, right? And of course, community members and people that are supporters to the harmer and harmed are welcome. So this can be sisters, brothers, uncles, whoever it is. They can be there to support the child because the child you don't want the child to be feeling like they're ostracized, right? Like they're the issue. No, you don't want that. You want them to feel safe. You want them to feel like they can count on us to figure out the issue, right? So this is a chart. This is a seating arrangement chart of where we have our restorative conferences, right? Like I said before. So we have the facilitator in the middle, of course, and then starting from the left, we have the supporter, the harmed, supporter, and supporter. Same as the harmed, the harmer does have that as well, right? The supporter, and supporter. So everybody feels supported. No one feels like it's one lopsided, right? Which helps it a lot, which helps us understand where the students are coming from. Now we also have community members. That can be a different teacher or even the principal and vice principal, but they're all there to help this situation out that has just arisen to the point where we need to fix this as soon as we can, right? So now what we're going to talk about is re-entry circles. This is after, let's say the student gets suspended, right? This is a re-entry circle. This is when students come back from school due to suspension or other situations. So other situations can be, they've had issues at home, then they didn't come back for 2 months because something was going on or they were incarcerated. It happens. But this is for re-entry back into school because, of course, we don't want them to fall behind. We want them to come back into school. So this is for students to feel like they're welcome back to school in a healthy and positive way. No judgment, no harm or anything else, in a healthy and positive way. Students are showed that they are supported by staff and parents. Facilitators make a support plan for students to be and do better for school. So they are supported by staff and parents. So everybody comes together and tells the kid, hey, you can do good. Just come back to school. You'll do great. We're promised we're going to be here to help you out. And most of the time, most of these kids are broken. And they just need A little bit of love, right? A little bit of caring, that we know that we can care for you. And we know that for a fact that once you come back to school, we know you can do a good job, right? And the facilitator makes a support plan, not just the facilitators, but the parents, teachers, staff, and the student. Everybody makes a support plan, you know, just for that one student or even many students. But we just want them to come back for the education, right? And to feel safe. So, for conclusion, restorative practices is restorative practices is relationships between people and communities that get stronger and healthier over time. By using restorative practices, we can help students not just overcome education decrease to suspension, but to help students with problems that arise with different peers and staff. So I think that sums up restorative practices very well. Why? Because we're trying to get the students to come back and to feel safe and to come back to school without using um, traditional ways of discipline, right? So we don't want any more suspensions. We just want them to come back to school in healthy, in a healthy way, right? Where they can feel like they're welcome. They can feel like nobody hates on them. But we know for sure if we use restorative practices, the education decrease will increase, right? Because there's less kids at home staying at home because they feel like they cannot learn at school due to bullying or any other situations, right? Or different peers and staff. So if any questions or concerns, well, thank you so much. That is my presentation